They're
Well,
consulting with
there is no genetic expertise on that particular topic.
Oh, Halsey, don't get mad. I'm discounting what she's saying.
Well, so you said you used to work with autistic kids, and I remember my sister did too. I actually went to the school one time, and some of them, they'd have to be put in these little cages, and they'd throw shit at people and stuff. So that's caused from the vaccines?
I mean, like I said, brain damage, right? So varying degrees of brain damage, depending on the person. I think there is a genetic component. There's the MTHFR gene that they've discovered that that shows that your ability not to be able to, like, what do you call it, detox, and it puts your glutathione. You can't detox stuff well. So if your body's being injected with toxins and you can't detox, you can't pass it, because even if you get a disease through your orifices, right, that's not injected, your body eventually is ridding the disease out. So if you have it in your system and you can't get it out, and it's passing your blood-brain barrier, it's going up to your brain, it can cause brain damage.
So we should probably, I think, start with doing a study on Antifa to see if they were all vaccinated. If they all were, holy shit, get off the vaccines now.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, like, let me see. There was one vaccine study surveyed, homeschooled study, 12-year-olds from Americans. Let me see. Compared 261 unvaccinated children with 405 partially or fully vaccinated children, and assess their overall health based on their mother's reports of vaccination and physician-diagnosed illnesses. Vaccinated children were 4-fold more likely to be diagnosed on the autism spectrum, 34 more likely to be diagnosed with allergic rhinitis, which is hay fever allergies, 24-fold more likely to acquire allergy medication, likely to be diagnosed with a learning disability, 30.
All right, direct your attention to the chat upper right. Halsey News Network. I'm discounting what she's saying because I keep asking for evidence, and she keeps giving me news articles. I'm no genius. I'm actually reading from a study. Okay, where's your evidence, wise ass? How come I'm the one that has pages and pages of notes, and I'm telling you stuff through memory, by memory, via memory, all throughout the debate, yet you're like huffing and puffing and Googling shit, and you're the one that's reading from articles and giving it to me. Where's your evidence? Don't worry though, I'll be putting this down in the links. So the study that I'm reading from down in the links, so people can see how truly ignorant you are. Truly.
347 more likely to be diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, 5.9-fold more likely to be diagnosed with pneumonia, vaccinated children, middle ear infections, 3.8 times more likely to ear infections, 700% more likely to have had surgery or insert in ear drainage tubes, and 2.4-fold more likely to have been diagnosed with any chronic.
Can I ask a question pertaining to those statistics real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the statistics of, let's say that they were vaccinated for, I don't know, tuberculosis, which they still give vaccinations for today. And let's say that,
I don't have the whole study in front of me. I just got notes, but I mean, partially or fully vaccinated.
My question is, do you know the effects of the X times more likely to Y for people who get the actual disease for which they're being immunized?
I don't know. I'd have to know like each person's like history and stuff. So, right. So it says partially vaccinated means like maybe they had some vaccines, and fully vaccinated means that they had all of their vaccines and their boosters.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, what is worse? And this is, basically the premise behind vaccinating kids is, getting the disease and having a much, much higher likelihood of perishing, or getting the vaccination and having a very slight likelihood of complication.
Wait, say that one more time. I'm sorry, miss. I was reading. Sorry. Say that last part one more time. Sorry.
Well, if you get the actual disease, you have a much higher likelihood of perishing or suffering a lot more complications than if you get the vaccination.
Well, actually, you can get the disease that you were vaccinated for and get complications.
Yeah, I know. We went around in circles on all this, and me and Halsey couldn't figure out what you were talking about.
Because you're stupid, that's why. I mean, that's obvious, right? Or maybe just willfully ignorant. So, I mean, like I said before, if you read the inserts, there's studies that I put up showing that you can actually get the disease that you were vaccinated for from the vaccine because they're injecting the disease into you. Does that make sense? Are you getting it now?
We're going to keep going around in circles because, like I said, like if you look at, you can get encephalitis from, which is a complication from like measles, but you can also get encephalitis from the vaccine, which is on the vaccine insert. And there have been cases reported to the VAERS. Do you guys know about the VAERS?
The VAERS is a self-reporting database where anyone who wants to can write anything they want about being injured by a vaccine. It's not reviewed by doctors or anybody.
That's right.
It's not reviewed by the very doctors who are brainwashed by the pharmaceutical industry to say that vaccines are so great. Yeah, of course. Why would it be?
It's just anyone whose opinion is they were injured by vaccines.
It's your opinion that it wasn't. How dare you tell those people what happened to them? You don't know those people. You weren't there.
I have something.
And you know what? Harvard, it's actually run by the Department of Human and Health Services, and Harvard did a study, and they showed that only they're guessing only 10% of people actually, report these events because, doctors aren't made, they don't know about them. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know about the system until they've already had an injury or it's too late. So
we were also told we could not sue anyone. We were told we signed for that shot. No doctors could be sued. No vaccine manufacturers could be sued. We found out when they were 5.5 that there was a vaccine injury court when I think we're all getting smartphones around then. That's when I had it at my pocket and started Googling everything. And they then told us that we were too late. They only had 3 years to apply. So we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to recover them.
Yeah, so I'm sure that they're going over and making up these VAERS reports for shits and giggles. By the way, the Vax team has collected over 6,000 anecdotal stories about vaccine injuries from all over the country and some the world. And by the way, that's more anecdotal stories or incidences than people that have polio or smallpox. Yet, we're supposed to believe those as truth. You can accept those anecdotes, but you guys won't accept this. That's some bullshit.
I mean, you want to say that these, reactions are rare, but how many people do you know that have allergies or epilepsy or asthma?
Someone had a question for the three of you. I don't know if anyone can answer it. Rod L. Miller. I recently lost a cousin to cystic fibrosis. In order to get CF, both parents have to carry the gene to pass it down. Has there ever been a study to show something similar with autism?
I don't know. I answered in the chat. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I would really be interested to know, and I think it's something that we should study because
we should study. We need a study of the whole vaccination schedule.
Well, I have a statement to make to the chat.
Before you can say that none of this is actually happening, and they haven't done that, and that they're safe and they're effective is fallacious because you can't.
Halsey and I probably differ on this because, like I said 15 minutes ago, I'm okay if a small percentage of people suffer complications. You present it as
you're okay with that? Oh, okay, I get it. It's okay to be okay as long as it's not anybody that you loved, as long as it's not your child that's been maimed or mutilated or killed. It's okay.
If 100% of people suffer these complications.
Well, a lot of people do because a lot of people have.
How many is a lot? You have to define a lot.
Well, Brian, I don't know. All authoritarian Marxists might be affected by vaccines.
Well,
that may be the answer to the question I've always been looking for.
I just want to address the chat, the people watching this right now, just real quick. It'll take 10 seconds.
Okay.
If you drive an automobile, you are infinitely more likely to get in an automobile accident as if you don't drive an automobile. Therefore, automobiles cause automobile accidents. Retweet.
Yeah, that doesn't make okay. Yeah, but you're injecting people with, that are perfectly healthy. You're injecting babies and children that are perfectly healthy with all of these ingredients in the vaccines that are causing autoimmune disorders that can kill them. And,
what ingredients are causing autoimmune disorders?
Okay, now I guess I've been debating myself all the time. I guess that's what's been going on because clearly he wasn't listening. Clearly. Why do I have to repeat myself? This is like so frustrating. Neanderthals. I'm telling you, Neanderthals.
Like I said, aluminum, you know, right? See, look, okay, here's this guy, Yehuda Schoenfeld. He's a top, he wrote this book, Vaccines and Autoimmunity. He's a specialist in autoimmune disorders in Israel. I wouldn't say that he's anti-vaccines, but he's definitely saying through his research studies, through people he's working with, that he believes that the aluminum in the vaccines is causing autoimmune disorders. And one of the things too is, in order to study autoimmune disorders in mice, they actually inject them with aluminum to induce autoimmune diseases in them so they can study them. So to think that it's not having a cause or an effect on humans is like actually ludicrous, because the reason that we perform vivisection on animals is to see what's going to happen to us.
I don't know where Halsey stands on this, but I would have to know the exact proportionality, the rates at which the negative consequences are happening, because I would just assume from everything I've read, and I'm a casual observer, it's not my field of study, that at the rates I've read is at most it's a few percentage points.
Yeah, I would have to disagree, just because the amount of autoimmune diseases that occur, and there are actually more people that die from the autoimmune diseases that are induced by vaccines than die from, you know.
Well, again, what is the evidence that they are induced by the vaccines other than going on about inflammation and blood-brain barrier, the BBB? You know, I mean, I don't know where this evidence comes that says that there is a direct causal factor.
Hey, Halsey, why don't you address some of this stuff you're saying to me? Feelings-based medicine is dangerous as fuck. What do you mean by that?
Carrie Donovan said, "I'm going to pull the mom card here. Many doctors will tell you that moms have awesome instinct for medical issues. If a woman is concerned, pay attention."
I'm embarrassed to admit that I was still a vaccine bully, that in my practice we needed certain vaccine rates and you couldn't question my authority, but then I started to make personal decisions for my own children where we wouldn't give my kids any new vaccine that had just been released. A silly rule at the time for what I know now, but I was never going to test vaccines on my kids again. And in 2007 or 8, I forget, I experienced my first regression to autism with one of my patients. Now, you've all heard the same story, that they were born with autism and the doctor just didn't know that they had autism, and it's really hard to pick. No, that's not true. My background's in child development. I was working with kids with special needs. I had a perfectly normal child in my practice until they received his 12-month vaccines. When I walked into the room at a 17-month visit, I literally saw a child I'd never met before. I thought I walked into the wrong room. I stepped out to look to make sure I was in the right room because I did not recognize this child. He had regressed into autism, one of the saddest cases I've ever seen. And hard to admit that I struggled with recognizing that that really happened to my patient. I still know the child today. I'm working with him. He's doing well. But it opened up my eyes. That's when I started reading about vaccines. A few years later, we had a patient die after his shots. They called it a SIDS death at 2 in the afternoon, a few hours after his vaccines. I remember the discussion, and I don't want to violate any confidentiality, so I'm going to be very careful with the words that I use. The coroner asked the ER doctor, "Do you think this was related to the vaccines that the child had earlier today?" And the doctor said, "Well, no, it wouldn't have been the vaccines," implying, of course, that vaccines are perfectly safe, so it was marked as a SIDS death, and everybody moved on. That family has peace. It was SIDS. It was unavoidable. It was just a random bad event. But that's when I started reading about vaccines. And it led to a transition in who I am today. I also want to humble myself before you. I read about an hour a day about vaccines, and I work with moms in my practice that read 10 hours a day. They know more than I do, and that's amazing. And to all the medical doctors who are watching this, I'm sure they know more than you do. There are a handful of doctors in our country that know as much as these moms do, because once your child was injured by vaccines, you'll never stop researching it.
And
well, they should. Yeah, they should. It's really arrogant to think that of a doctor to think that they know more about their child than their own parent.
I think it's the doctor knowing more about human physiology than the random mother.
Yeah, but if a
baby needs to be burped.
If a woman gets if a child gets a vaccine and their child was normal before that, and the mom goes and tells the doctor that, and the doctor is like, "Oh, you're just making it up," That's really arrogant. That's like, what? You know, and the doctor's supposed to listen to the patient, you know?
Well, there's also moms that are forcing their kids to get tranny surgery. So we can't say all moms in general.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with having your child be, you know, attacked or getting brain damage from a vaccine. Right?
No. I'm just saying.
I would believe it if a mother said she believes there's something wrong with her kid. I'm not going to say that mommy instinct is going to say that, oh, that vaccine gave my child brain damage.
Well, it's mommy observation and not instinct, because you saw what happened to your child.
So she saw her child get a vaccine, and then become brain damaged.
Yeah.
And that's
that I agree with.
Yeah.
Where are all these?
Well, I agree with that observation. I mean, if it's
I mean, real.
I think a dad could notice that too.
You know, yeah, and I mean, you know, if you you know, are skateboarding and you fall down and break your arm, you know, we know it's your arm's broken because you fell off the skateboard. If you had a vaccine, it was the only thing that you did different that day, and your brain swelled up. I mean, don't you believe in cause and effect? Right.
So if it's happening that quickly, how are they not seeing it before they even leave the hospital? You're acting like it's like an immediate reaction.
It is. In some cases it is. In some cases it's a few hours later.
Well, I would need to see these cases, and watching you and talking to you, I haven't seen where you presented any of these cases.
Like, I have a lot of stuff here that I've gone through. You should actually go and look up, you know, stuff that supports my evidence.
I should go do my research, Cenk Uygur. I know.
No, wait, hold on. Versteem, I
should, because obviously you haven't.
Just wanted to ask you. So that special court that deals with vaccines, right? What did we say that was created under Reagan?
Yeah.
Are those public records, or are those like secret courts? I mean, can we look at actual cases that came out of there?
Yeah, let me see. Okay, so it's not through. I have some cases from the law firms where they've won cases through that.
Oh, I mean, so there's stuff that's public information.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's not like the FISA courts where it's all totally secret.
No, I found actually a couple of law firms that actually. I just have a lot of information to look through.
I know,
but I'm not doubting that there are people that are vaccine injured. There are people that have bad reactions to everything. There are people that have bad reactions to peanuts. There are people that have bad reactions to leaves. People have bad reaction to all kinds of shit. And what I'm saying is, I have never doubted for 1 second that people can be vaccine injured. What I'm saying is that the process of administering a vaccine to a person who does not have an adverse reaction to it, which is the vast, overwhelming majority of people, are not experiencing these things, and that the administration of a vaccine and an allergy to it or an adverse reaction, which do exist, are not the same thing as saying that you're giving the vaccine and it's causing an overwhelming response in most people the opposite way.
Yes, exactly. And if the chat needs to understand this, let me break it down. Let's say 1,000 people bought a 2-liter of Coca-Cola at the grocery store. One of them got sick and died. You can't then say that Coca-Cola was the causal factor in this person getting sick and died because it didn't affect the rest of them. You have to go deeper and look scientifically at the other factors that are a commonality among the group.
Or you can say that, okay, it wasn't Coca-Cola. It was the flavoring number 7 that the guy was allergic to. It isn't that Coca-Cola causes death. It's that a guy was allergic to one of the ingredients, and that's what happened. If you're telling me that everybody is allergic to something, then cool. Then I can say, okay, that's bad on the whole. But what I'm saying, though, is that there's a big difference to an adverse reaction and a overwhelming proof that something is bad.
So an adverse reaction is an unexpected or dangerous reaction to a drug, right? An unwanted effect caused by an administration of a drug.
A side effect.
So the side effect that people say when a vaccine gave their child autism is the side effect is autism. So when they're going in to get a measles vaccine, which isn't, a threat or danger in a first world country where we have, clean sanitation and we have, adequate nutrition and access to healthy amounts of vitamin A, it's not worth it to get, the adverse event of having your child being maimed for life.
Well, hey, if we're talking about forcing it on people, I don't care if you don't get your kids vaccinated. Just don't bring them around my kids and my family. That's all.
Well, actually, the vaccinated people, because I still have shedding, which says in the vaccine insurance, which warns people, actually, it's not even an adverse reaction. It's a precaution saying that it does shed. Then actually people that are freshly vaccinated are actually more dangerous and more.
Which has never been proven ever.
Well, only to people that don't read the inserts.
Well.
Hi, my name is Eric. I'm a single father raising a 15-year-old, severely autistic, nonverbal teenage daughter, all on my own. She was born normal. When she was 15 months old, she received a round of vaccines that included the MMR and the DTUBE. She developed a high fever, held the fever for a week. When the fever broke, she lost everything. Her early speech, the desire to be touched, eye contact, everything. And we knew something was immediately wrong. It took a few months later before we got the diagnosis of autism. And I remember the month very well. It was January of 2000. What made it worse was within 3 weeks, Miranda, my daughter, shed the measles virus, and her mom caught it. We know this because we found the titers in her brain and spinal fluid. She had a massive flare-up. She must have been immune compromised to begin with, but it triggered MS, and now, years later, she's in a nursing home. So, vaccines destroyed my family. Vaccines do cause autism. Some people maybe don't hear this too well, but vaccines do cause autism.
Yes, because the insert tells you that that's what's going to happen. And it's happened all over the place. We've seen it. We've seen it.
Have you ever been?
I can give you more studies.
Well, that's why everybody in a hospital drops dead of measles, because as soon as they administer
everybody
one
in the
vaccination,
hospital drops dead of measles. Really?
Yeah, all of them. I've seen the evidence. Every single kid in the hospital drops dead of measles, because as soon as they administer one vaccine, it sheds to all of them, and then they all die.
It goes through the air ducts. Haven't you ever seen Mission Impossible?
I'm just saying, like, you're saying that it sheds, but people, I'm being sarcastic. People get vaccines all over the place, and they don't shed to other people.
You can shed and not have symptoms. So you can be a carrier and not have symptoms.
But you're
pre-vaccine, adults developed very strong immunity at the lung interface. And I can get to that in a minute, but there's a peer-reviewed article by Warfel from 2014 that was done on baboons who show the similar type of cough and immunity to humans, which showed basically that if you don't have that strong immunity at the lung interface, that even if you're vaccinated, you're likely to be the person that's spreading disease asymptomatically. But pre-vaccine, these adults experienced the disease and they developed very strong immunity and limited the spread. Then the first vaccine came along. It was a whole cell vaccine, meaning it was the entire bacteria that was killed and put into the vaccine and injected. It had thimerosal in it and aluminum in it. It was very reactogenic. There were major problems that were happening with that. Vaccine companies went out of business. Connaught went out of business with that vaccine. And it was basically replaced by the vaccine that we have today, which is acellular vaccine, which means that there are just some parts of the bacteria in the vaccine. So the good news about that is that it's less reactogenic, meaning that there are far fewer problems with it, but there are still significant problems if you look at VAERS. But that it creates something called original antigenic sin. And I didn't create this term. This is an immunologic term that indicates that your first experience with an infection or with a vaccine will predict your response to later exposures. And that can actually be a detrimental thing or a helpful thing. If your first exposure is an acellular vaccine, this has been proven by Cherry, who is one of the foremost writers on this issue for the past 2 or 3 decades, peer-reviewed medical journals, showing that people that are vaccinated don't respond to a toxin that the bacteria creates called adenylate cyclase toxin. It basically creates a force field that fools the body. So what happens is these people get their vaccines, which might prevent you from coughing for a short period of time. But ask yourself, why do babies need so many vaccines? Why do we have to keep getting them over and over? Why does a pregnant woman require a vaccine every time she's pregnant, even if she's pregnant every year? It's because of this phenomenon that the vaccines, while they might prevent you from coughing for a short period of time, will not actually prevent you from spreading the disease. And moreover, that if you're exposed to the bacteria later, you are the person that's more at risk for having a very serious case of whooping cough if that vaccine is not protecting you the way it is designed to. The evidence for that is with warfel that I talked about earlier, and also Dr. Cherry has written about this, that the people that are vaccinated, their immunity begins in the blood and not in the lung surface. The bacteria comes in through the lungs. And so you want the battle to take place at the lung surface, and that's what happens with natural immunity. So let me just tell you the difference between these two baboon types. They looked at baboons that had never been vaccinated, and they gave them the disease, whooping cough. Then they took some that were vaccinated with the vaccine that we use today, and they compared them after re-exposure. And what they found is that the baboons who had been vaccinated with the vaccine that we use today had very high colony counts of bacteria in their lungs, even though they weren't coughing when they were re-exposed. The baboons who had actually were recovered after whooping cough and then re-exposed had no bacteria in their lungs. So that's one of the problems with today's vaccine. But the other problem is, and this is written about in the CDC's website, it's very widely published, nobody wants to talk about it, but mutant strains have been born out of vaccinated populations. Just like bacteria mutate and become superbugs, the same thing has happened in a big way with pertussis vaccines. It's a major problem. It's written about worldwide. There's pertactin, which is an antigen on the bacteria, is not on some of the bacteria that are now these mutant strains. They're producing more toxin. It's much more vicious. We're seeing definitely worse cases of whooping cough, and these strains, it's documented medical literature, have come out of vaccinated populations, not unvaccinated populations. They don't find them there. Also told that it was all due to the unvaccinated in California. And I have the stats right here that I got from the CDC, MMWR, from California, the California Department of Public Health. This is available to everybody. And so there were approximately there were 49 unvaccinated people in that total of 110 cases in California. And I'll tell you that of them, 18 were old enough to have vaccination, but 12 of them were actually too young to be vaccinated. So it's not really fair to count them as unvaccinated. 9 of them were sick when the vaccine was due. Interestingly enough, there were 12% of those cases that were vaccinated. So that tells you that there was a large proportion of the outbreak in California that was vaccinated. And in fact, one of those cases turned out to be a vaccine strain. And when it was later tested because of increased surveillance, they took it off of the register and did not count it as a case anymore. And this has happened several times throughout the world where because of increased surveillance, they find that a case that they see with full-blown measles turns out to be a vaccine strain from the vaccine that child received, and they remove it from the register and don't count it as measles.
Okay, so I get a measles vaccine. I don't show symptoms. I'm rocking around. It's shedding in my saliva and other parts. You know, I'm shedding it. I can shed it to other people, and they can get symptoms. I don't have to get symptoms. I can still get vaccinated, still not have symptoms, and still shed the
okay,
disease.
so other than the insert which says this can happen, where has this happened?
So you're saying that I sent you news articles. If I send you an article of what happened, of a case that happened where a guy got chickenpox and he shed it to his son, so he didn't have any.
Okay, my bad here. I totally meant to say smallpox.